Ian, the Braves have swept the Mets. This series felt like a playoff series, but they swept the Mets, and now they have a two-game lead in the NL East division. It's amazing because back on June 1st, the Mets had a 10 and a half game lead. And now look how the tables have turned. This is the biggest collapse in terms of having a large gap in the division since the 95 California Angels. They remind me of the 95 Angels team in terms of they had a long gap in the division. But the thing is that the Mets, there were certain games this season that the Mets didn't take advantage in terms of going up against below 500 teams. They lost several games to below 500 teams. And the Braves have just been catching fire. Both teams have been great this season. It's been a great competitive division battle between both teams. But it was a crazy series because you beat arguably the top three pitchers that the Mets have: DeGrom, Scherzer, and Bassett. So Matt Olson, and Dansby Swanson, they combined for 6 homers and 10 RBIs in the series. What's your take on what you saw this series?
Well, you have to remember that the Braves won the World Series last year. This is an experienced team that knows how to win, knows how to win at the end of the season and into the playoffs. And the Braves knew that it was a marathon, not a sprint. The Mets sprinted out to a great start this season and really caught New York by storm. Really, both New York teams were catching the city by storm. But the Braves knew, okay, as long as we get into the dance, as long as we're playing our best baseball come September, October, we'll be just fine. And the most important thing was that they beat the Mets' top pitchers, exactly what you mentioned, taking the DeGrom game, taking the Scherzer game. If the Mets going into October and the playoffs, they're going to rely on the backs of those two pitchers. And if the Braves can knock them out, that's a pretty good sign for the Braves. And now the Braves are in the driver's seat for that number 2 seed, that bye into the divisional series. Meanwhile, the Mets are now going to have to take on, play in the wild card series and then go ahead into the divisional round and start that on the road and not have home field. It's going to be a pretty tough road for the Mets now that they squandered this golden opportunity. But right at the beginning of the season, everyone circled that series this past weekend as one to watch out for, Mets Braves, and the Braves showed up, the Mets didn't.
Yeah, and now the Mets might face either San Diego or Philadelphia in the wild card series, but they will be at home. And it's funny that that for the first time in baseball, we're talking about having a bye week or having a bye, whatever. It feels like watching football because that's in football that you mostly use those terms, having the first round bye, home field advantage, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't mean that just because you have a bye, that you're automatically front runner to go win it all. Because sometimes when you have a bye week or bye days, by the time you face that team, you're going to be rusty and, a little bit out of sync. But in terms of guys like DeGrom and Scherzer, yes, the Mets will rely on them. But I also look at it as, these guys are slowly getting back into form because both of them were out with injuries. And the thing that people need to know about injuries is that once you come back, it takes a couple of games and more, to get into full 100%. So that's what I looked at it. Yes, is a concern, durability, especially on DeGrom's part. But I feel that if you could somehow, some way, manage to rest those guys or use them at their best abilities, they're going to be fine, at least for the wild card series round. But the Braves, you got to give them credit. They came into the series this weekend. They, they busted their ass, I should say. And now we just going to have to wait and see what happens because October baseball, is here, is coming right there in the corner. but it's an exciting time, with the expansion of the playoffs, and any team can get hot. Any team can go and win it all. So last year, the Braves were they the most dominant team, the most talented team? No, but it was just getting the right hits at the right time, and the pitching came through. So and and I was very happy that they won last year because, as you know, Atlanta sports have been suffering for so long. So the fact that the Braves finally got over the hump and win their first titles in '95, it was a great story for them. But hear this. So the Mets, Francisco Lindor, he went 2 for 13 with 5 strikeouts in the series. Overall, the Mets had 7 RBIs as a team. None of them were produced by Pete Alonso and Lindor.
You can look at that two different ways. You can look at that the big stars aren't performing, and that in the biggest games you're going to have to rely on your biggest stars. But I think you can flip it around the other way and say, you know what, that shows the depth of this Mets team, and it shows that they're not just only going to rely on Lindor or Alonso, that they have, hitters up and down the lineup that can produce. So it really depends on how you want to spin it. Do you want to say, well, the biggest stars didn't show up in the biggest games, or the Mets depth, they don't have to rely on those players? And, it's the positive spin and the negative spin. And it's really your take on how you want to look at it.
Yes, most definitely. And the Mets have proven with other guys like Mark Hanna, Jeff McNeil, they have guys there that can come through for you. But let's see how they bounce back in these last few games remaining in the regular season. But like I said, it's very entertaining time, man. I really like this Mets Braves series. It brings me I've never been so excited for a Mets Braves series since the Chipper Jones, Mike Piazza era, 98, 99, 2000. Like, those were fun times. And that's when I started watching baseball on top of that. So the fact that we finally got Mets and Braves, a competitive 2 teams going at it for the division, is just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's a really good point, that this could be the restart of that Mets Braves rivalry that was so strong when you had the Chipper Jones, Mike Piazza era. But it's going to be an exciting time, and the fact that the NL East race has come down to the final few games of the season.
We've waited for this moment. The number 1 prospect, 20 years old, Francisco Alvarez, got called up. Yes, he has success in AA and AAA, batting .260, 27 home runs, 78 RBIs. But I knew that coming into the series, I didn't expect much from him because, again, this is only the beginning. So just because it has worked out in the minors, that doesn't mean it's going to pan out so fast early on in the majors. So as we saw the human side of him, he went 0 for 8. A lot of the pitches were off speed, sliders that he struggled with. But I just looked at it as a learning process, something that he has to work on, something that he can take away in the offseason and bring into next season. But at least, what I like that the Mets did is they made him get his feet wet, towards the end of the regular season. And what a better way to do it against the Atlanta Braves. So what are your thoughts on Alvarez so far, and just overall about Alvarez? What do you think about him?
It's exciting to finally see him in a New York Mets uniform. I know Mets fans have been looking forward to this moment for a while, but bringing him up in the biggest games of the season and throw him right into the fire, that's for sure. But I think that the Mets know that they have a diamond in the rough there, a crown jewel, and hopefully will turn into something. Not the result that they wanted against the Braves, but you have to remember, this kid's 20 years old. he's got his entire career ahead of him. There are going to be days when he struggles. There are going to be days when he goes 4 for 4 with 2 home runs. So it's all about that learning curve, and you hope that he has more of those 4 for 4 days than those 0 for 4 days. So it's exciting that now he's gotten a taste of the majors, and you hope that he has a very long and productive career.
Yes, for sure. I like this guy so far. I have a great feeling about him. And that's something, and then listen, New York media is tough. It's tough. So the way how New York is built, they don't care they don't care how young you are or how old you are, they want to see you produce. But I feel like in his case, you got to give him time. He's only 20 years old, and we got to see. I'm looking forward to what he can do next year. Next year is what I'm really looking forward to. He turns 21 next year, and he's gonna be 21 next year. So I'm looking forward to how he will do in a full season.
That's a really good point. I mean, this is just a sample size. Even if he stays up with the Mets throughout the rest the final series of the regular season and throughout the playoffs, next year is going to be the real test to see more of exactly what they have in him. And I do think that he has a very promising future in Queens.
And he has it easy because it's not one of these things where he has to carry a team. He has Lindor, he has Alonso, he has McNeil, he has the pitching stuff. So he has the help. He's just going to be there, obviously, to not only establish himself as a hitter, as a catcher, et cetera, but he also has that veteran leadership in the locker room, on the field, that can guide him and help him. And that's what I love about this whole situation. The Mets, if they play their cards right, they're going to be around for a long time. We know that the Braves are going to be there for a long time because all these contracts, all these players that they have, and the guys that they have in the farm system. So Braves and Mets, I'm loving the future of where this is going.
Absolutely right. It should be a very interesting NL East for years to come, and glad that this is only the beginning of it.